Hello and welcome, everybody. It is Coach Action Jackson, and I'm back here with another episode of Client Success Stories. I've got Forrest here today, and Forrest did such an incredible job. I couldn't wait to get him on the show and have a quick conversation about some of the success and the results he had. He lost 20 pounds, incredible. Went from no pack to six pack, significantly reducing his body fat percentage. Also lost about 4 inches off of his waist, and this guy is peeled to the gills. He's incredibly shredded, and I can't wait to share his story with you. So, Forrest, welcome to the program, and why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate that. And so I'm Forrest. I'm, 38 years old and work in construction, outdoors all day, every day, and um, just kind of got into the program to take care of myself because I've seen something that wasn't looking back at myself in the mirror, wasn't what I was liking, and have had great success getting into this program, and appreciate that you reached out to me after you and I had a few conversations to get me into it.
Yeah, your story is incredible because not only did you get great results and are you absolutely peeled to the gills, I mean, shredded, man. I mean, just super shredded. But you also had a bunch of obstacles along the way, and obviously you've been able to maintain the success through the thing. So, you've gone through some transitions with moving and other stuff, and you've been able to overcome those obstacles. And you also have an incredibly active job, which can be difficult for a lot of people. And doing that job and still managing to get your workouts in and stuff. I mean, you're a savage, man. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to chat with you, because most people work office jobs and they struggle to get their workouts in. So I guess how did you manage to not only overcome the obstacles, but even just get your workouts in on a regular basis, given how much energy and effort it takes for your normal job?
It kind of goes back before I met with you on joining this program. I had bought a tonal, about a year and a half before you and I actually started having conversations. And I was doing the typical thing, running on the treadmill, riding the bike, and not seeing any results, going out and running, just putting in a bunch of work and not seeing results. Bought the tonal, we didn't have a lot of space for a full weight set and whatnot. And so bought that, and because I knew I needed to start lifting again. I lifted all through high school and in college, as an athlete, and always had that foundation. And at some point that all went away as life got busy and going. And so finally I got the tonal, got into it, and you get on there and you got all these different options of the different workouts or different programs and what to follow. And quite honestly, I found one of your workout programs on there. I think it was the Summer Shred program was the first program I actually completed on there. And the reason I picked it was because I was looking at your build and your physique, and it was like, this guy's got exactly like what I'm looking for. So he's obviously knows how to put the workouts together to get the physique. And that's my own ignorance, is you can't outwork a bad diet. But I started putting in I started putting in the work and getting results on the tonal, and had it for about a year. And then I started another program, 75 hard. I got into that and went through the mental toughness of doing those steps every day, the reading, the workout, 2 workouts, and following a diet. It is not a specific diet. It's any diet of your choice. And it's, you are holding yourself accountable and still not being educated on what the actual diet should be. And so I was doing that and working through it and getting results, the mental toughness part of it, and forcing myself into that. I was able to find the time with my job, with a kid, with, a wife, and all the family stuff that goes on, and just life. I work 10 to 12 hours a day in my job, and doing 75 hard, I started realizing, I do have this time. I'm putting 90 minutes of workout time in right now. I'm doing the reading, and you start working through that, and you start to realize where you can, instead of sitting down on the couch and turning the TV on and watching an episode of Friends or something like that, you find the time to get your workouts in. You find the time to do that. And then you and I started talking, and I got into the program, and I actually finished my 75 days in the first week of joining your program. And I probably saw the biggest part of my results in that first week, just because I was actually, all my workouts was doing your programs, 4 weeks of fat loss, 4 weeks of fat loss 2. And then I would go and do, go big or go home, and just bouncing back and forth between programs, and joined your program. And like I say, in that first week of actually changing the diet and the no carb days and doing the insulin reset, it really hit hard in that last week of my 75 hard. But you gave me a direction to follow, and got my focus into where I actually needed to be focusing on what I was missing in life.
I love that. So lots to unpack there. So you're doing 75 hard. That helped you with some of the mental toughness aspects. Also helped you, it sounds like, with time management, which is so critical. So you kind of had those pieces already hashed out. Now, 75 hard isn't a specific workout, and it's not a specific diet. So while you were having some success, we really wanted to hone in on the details to make sure we're going to get to that next level. So what we did is, and this is so critical, you mentioned it, jumping around from one thing to the next on the tonal, this program, then that program. And the problem is that they're not sequenced properly, and they're not leveraging progressive overload as you go from one program to the next, because they're all built as individual entities. So once we were able to get the sequencing and the progressive overload to go from one phase to the next, and then we paired that with the diet, is when the results really started to come. And I can't stress this enough. So many people, they look at their training and their diet as two individual entities, and they don't pair them together. And if they're not paired together and they're not integrated, working together, complementing one another, you're not going to see those next level results, and you're never going to get the six pack. So I love that you kind of, what was the realization, if there was one, that was like, oh, you know what? I need to, whether it's get help or I need to make sure that these things are integrated. Was it the conversation we had, or what was the cue that got you to realize that you needed the more specific details to get to the results you wanted?
One of the many books I read through doing 75 hard was actually your book. And I read through the book, and it didn't quite connect with me as well as it has actually working with you hands on.
Sure, of course.
But
Reading a book is obviously a little bit different, but yeah.
Yeah. And I'm very good at following directions, but even just written in a book and reading it and actually comprehending it and putting it all together is not the easiest thing to do. And so I had asked you a few questions before we even actually worked together, and just my thoughts and trying to figure things out. And then at some point, I don't know, the switch just kind of flipped that, I do need some direction, and I need some guidance on this. I could stand in front of the tonal for an hour trying to figure out what my next workout's going to be, or my next program's going to be, because it's just so many options, and actually trying to put those to what I'm trying to achieve was just not happening. And then to add the diet in on top of actually, as you're doing an insulin reset, or, doing your protein loading, there's a workout that goes with that versus, I'm just kind of doing whatever, like, oh, I feel like 4 weeks of fat loss is going to do it for me right now. But if I'm still, doing this other eating habits, it doesn't go together.
Absolutely. You're correct about that. So, two big points I want to draw out or sort of emphasize. The first is that strength training isn't like cardio. With a Peloton or something, you just jump on, you start pedaling, you pick anything, and you just go. With strength training, not only does it have to be to your level, pushing you just outside your comfort zone, it has to be something that's aligned with your goals, also something that aligns with your previous training history, injury history. All of these factors have to be included, but it also has to be then leveraged correctly to leverage progressive overload so that you're going to get the results that you want. And you're going to see progress, and you're not going to plateau or even regress. And there's so many forms of progressive overload that people don't even realize. It's not just increasing the weight. It's total volume, it's time under tension, it's range of motion, it's exercise selection. It can also be things like density, the amount of time that you're lifting, it's total volume. All of these factors are included in progressive overload in ways of leveraging it, which people don't think about. And the second aspect you mentioned there, which is out training a bad diet. Most people's diet consists of two words: eat healthy. And that's all they think about, or eat clean. And that's not going to do it. You need a better plan than that. Imagine you sat down with a financial planner and you said, "What's the plan?" And he said, "Save money." You'd say, "That's what I'm getting for 1%?" That is not what I'm paying for. I need some details and specifics here, man. And we got to have more or a better plan. And it's got to be more comprehensive than just eat healthy or eat clean. How much? What foods? What are the macros? What are the percentages? How does that integrate with the training plan? That's the kind of stuff and the details that we need if you want to get to the next level. If you just want to lose a couple of pounds and you're very overweight or something, hey, eat clean. That's going to be a start. Once you're already starting to make some adjustments and changes, if like you want to get the six pack, you got to take it. You got to take things to the next level. So I love that. Okay, so you're obviously, you join the program, you realize and recognize that you need the extra level of coaching. What were some of the obstacles outside of obviously the move and everything you went through, but what were some of the other obstacles that you faced over the course of the program, especially early on? Was it difficult to manage some of those, whether there was the lower carb days, or maybe it was the workouts or the intensity? What were some of the struggle points, and how did you overcome those things?
So one of my big challenges was actually trying to figure the diet out, trying to figure out the low carb and the no carb days. And when you actually start weighing things, you realize really fast how much you're truly consuming. You know, um, when I first joined the program, my wife and I, we go to the grocery store, we buy all this healthy eating, I say that with quotations, clean eating. And then I actually look at the diet and it's like, boy, that sweet potato that is actually pretty healthy for me does not fit the macros for phase one. It's too many carbs, or and figuring out the starchy versus non-starchy, and the carbs that don't count, clean carbs, and trying to get through all that was one of my biggest challenges. And I think the second week in, I reached out to you about a couple questions about it because I was having a hard time. I I got to a point where I was actually full and felt like I was eating enough, but I was still substantially under on my calories for the day. When I had a 1900 calories a day allotment, and I was only around 1,000 calories, but I was still felt full already at that point. That is like, do I need to be changing something? Should I be pushing towards that calorie goal? Am I, and so that was my big challenge, was actually trying to figure all the macros and the calories and consumption. Yeah, almonds, throw a handful of almonds in. Well, I have big hands, and a handful of almonds for me is 2 to 4 ounces of almonds. And so, it's really easy for me to just consume a whole bunch, and you turn it from not being a good snack to you're over consuming. and because your fat levels are going to be too high at this point. So trying to figure all that out was one of my biggest challenges.
Okay. So one of the common jokes in the fitness industry with coaches is that people start to cry and will have like a total mental breakdown when they see how many calories are actually in a real tablespoon of peanut butter and what that actually looks like. Because most people think they know what a tablespoon of peanut butter looks like when they put it on the measuring stick, but it's usually like a tablespoon and a half or almost two. And when you weigh peanut butter and you see what a real tablespoon of peanut butter actually is and how many calories that is, it's like extremely depressing. It's like your worst day ever. So absolutely, understanding how much you're consuming is incredibly important, because if you don't, it's kind of like your gas tank. If you don't know how much you're supposed to put in the tank, well, how do you know what to do? You don't. You need to have that gauge, and you need to understand, oh, this is how much I'm consuming. So now that gives me an understanding of what my energy intake and my energy, output is, so I can get the balance right and make sure I'm getting enough calories to recover, but of course, not so much that I'm going to get out of the deficit. So that's the first part. Now, what specific things did you do to kind of quote unquote figure out the diet? Meaning, like, was it just getting better with tracking? Was it specific foods? Was it just a combination of like, you working with me or maybe working with your family or your wife? Like, what specifically did you do to try to figure out the diet?
I really cracked down on the MyFitnessPal, just inputting everything. Everything went across the kitchen scale, and teaching myself the macros. I was resilient to subscribe to the MyFitnessPal at first, because it's an expense on top of everything else that you're already. Healthier food is more expensive. Coaching has its price, but so I finally told myself, like, you already invested all this into it. Let's get the MyFitnessPal going and following the macros, and that actually was what turned it around. Was being able to, like I say, everything went across the kitchen scale, everything got inputted, and just really working the diet that you provided for me.
Got it. So is that something you're still doing now today? Are you still tracking to that level?
Yeah, I backed off a little bit through phase 3, because we were in the middle of selling our house and buying a new house and everything that gets to come and go with that, plus working my job. But I am back to tracking and keeping track of everything that's going in. Have learned a lot, and understanding, like I say, just the snack, the almonds was my big thing. Almonds and cashews was my big peanut butter moment, I guess you could call it. The how much I was actually consuming, and so I am still keeping track, and maybe not as tight as I was in the beginning of it, but I've gotten better at understanding what it is I'm actually inputting now versus in the beginning. I had no idea, like, wow, that was 4 ounces of almonds is, 1,000 calories. And so I, I have a better grasp of how much I'm consuming now.
The biggest thing that people don't get when it comes to that is that you need to understand and you need to learn, right? You need to train yourself so that you can start to eat more intuitively, and you need to figure out what portion sizes are and how much you are consuming. It's like, imagine if you asked a friend who had never been in the city that you're in. If you go travel to a new city with a friend and you ask them for directions, hey man, how do you get from X to Y? I don't know. I've never been here. Well, exactly. If you've never tracked anything before, if you've never monitored your portion sizes, tracked your calories, or tracked your macros, you're not going to have any understanding or any perception. Your sort of intuition is going to be very poor. So you need to train your intuition. You need to learn, figure it out first. Then later on, you're either going to, number one, get so good at tracking that it's not going to be an issue. And many of our clients get to that point. Or number two, you're going to get to the point where you start to train your intuition. You learn portion sizes, you learn your go-to snacks, your go-to meals, etc. And then you won't have to track nearly as diligently because you're going to know exactly what to eat and roughly how much that is. And all of a sudden you start looking at a plate and you start to say, boom, that's 4 ounces of chicken. And you're probably going to be pretty close because you'll know it because you've seen it a bunch of times. But before you train your intuition, you learn that, you're kind of ignorant to it and you don't really know. You don't know what you don't know. So you're completely flying blind. So you kind of train that, which is, it sounds like you have. Now, have you kind of gotten better at doing that? Has your skills improved in the education so that it is a little bit easier now? Or is it still just as difficult as it was in the beginning?
No, it definitely has gotten easier, and it's the only reason I didn't just balloon back up through, the move and everything like that, because what a better time to stress eat than while you're actually under a major stress load. And I was able to maintain and actually not gain any unnecessary weight through the entire process of moving. And so that was really big for me, because I am, before this, I'm the guy that could clean a family size pizza by myself. I can mass consume with the best of them. And that didn't happen anymore through, the most stressful time that I've been going through in recent history, and getting back into the program. Yeah, I definitely have gotten better at being able to judge and monitor without actually having to weigh everything on the scale.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. And it's so critical because most people, they fail and they spiral out of control when it's something with the job, stressful, or travel, or a vacation, or like you moving and moving from one home to a next. Those are trigger points, and those are obstacles that often derail people, cause them to spiral, get way off track, and they never course correct. Or by the time they do, they're so far gone that they got to go 10 steps back just to get to where they were. And you're able to navigate that obstacle without gaining a bunch of weight. I mean, that's just incredible. I can't stress or emphasize enough how important that is, because you don't get the shame, you don't get the guilt, you don't get the frustration or the anger or any of those negative feelings then associated with it. In fact, when that event, that life event, and the stress starts to die down, you're like, holy cow, I navigated this and I did really well. Now you're excited, you're more motivated to jump back in, and you're like, I'm exactly where I was before. Now it's all upside from here. So that's really awesome to hear. Now, as far as like, I guess we talked a lot about this being difficult in the beginning and managing all these things. I guess my biggest question is like, why was this important to you? You started off, you're another one of these classic good to great stories. You come in decent shape, you're working out, you're doing all the things. Many people would say, Forrest, I mean, you look good. Well, what are you doing this for? Now you look like you should be on the cover of Men's Health. I mean, again, I'm not blowing smoke up your butt. Like, you see the photos, you are peeled, six pack, just looking shredded. You've posted a couple of photos in our client only Facebook group, and people were like going bananas. They were like, oh my God, this guy looks incredible. You look absolutely, and use the word absolutely intentionally, absolutely incredible. Why was this so important to you? And what was the driver behind it?
Well, I appreciate the compliments, and I'm still learning on how to accept compliments on the physique that I've built. But it all actually goes back to when I bought the tonal. We were at a swim party or something like that with my son. He's 5 now, so he was about 4 at the time, and he was walking around kind of strutting his stuff, and he's hanging out with his belly out. And, he just thinks he's hot dogging. And somebody said, oh man, he walks just like his dad. And it clicked hard. Like, is that what I look like walking around? Because that looks pretty sloppy. I had the gut going on, the dad bod, you know. And so it kind of started clicking to me at that point. My family has health issues with, diabetes and overweight and heart disease and stuff on one side of the family. And so the thing with my son clicking in my head, and it took me to the fact that, most of the men in my family have not seen 60 in their lives, and I'm 38 now. It's like, well, I don't want this to be the halfway point of my life. I gotta, and I had been a healthy, strong person my entire life. I was an athlete in high school and in college, and like I say, at some point I let it go. The other thing, and through the process of getting the tonal and getting into it, and actually, overall, your programs on tonal before I joined this, and with this program, I'm actually down almost 50 pounds from the beginning of all of it. And so it's major life changing stuff that I went through, and it just clicked at some point. It all just kind of started falling together. I was listening to a podcast one day, and one of the guys on there was talking about, it's not worth all the work you have to put in to be the hot dad. Like, what's the enjoyment you get out of being the hot dad? You already got the wife and the girl and this and that and the other thing. And in my mind, I was like, I put in all the work and become the hot dad or whatever when my wife and all of her girlfriends are over there at the pool, and when the other girls are like, and my wife can be like, yeah, that's my husband, and it's going to make her that much more excited to spend time with me. And so it all kind of came together, and I have, through the entire process of this, one of my goals was to be the hot dad. And you and I talked about that early on, and it's just kind of been the motivation, I guess.
Wow. That's very deep, and that's an incredible story. I appreciate you sharing that with me. And it hits so close to home for me too, because my dad works out all the time. He's actually just had shoulder surgery today because he works out so much. He's 75 years old, and just the wear and tear on his body over so many years. But my dad works out almost every day, strength training, and he did this since I was a little kid. And it was because, number one, yes, he wanted to be strong for his job, but both his dad and then his grandpa, neither of them made it past 55, and he wanted to make it past 55. So same idea, health problems in his family. All the men died really early. So he wanted to make sure that he was going to live a very long, healthy, and active life. And with my mom not taking care of herself and not taking her health and fitness very seriously, he had to make sure that he took care of himself for our family, so he could be there to take care of her, but to take care of obviously all of his kids. And that example that he set for me, obviously, is why I'm sitting here talking to you today. It's why I worked out, why I pushed myself, into the gym, even as early as high school, college, and why I've invested so much now as a coach. And I take it so seriously. It's because that example that he set for me, and of course, the tragedy of watching, my mom struggle because she didn't take her health and fitness seriously. So I want to commend you for doing that, being that example, being the leader, for your family, and showing people and being an inspiration to so many people. There needs to be more people like you embracing the idea of, I want to be healthy, I want to be fit, and I want to be kind of the hot dad, as opposed to let's laugh it off and be, the dad bod. I was in an event for my wife's work the other day, and some guy walked up, and he was definitely had the midsection and the beer belly going and stuff. And he kind of chuckled. Somebody introduced him to me, and he said, "Oh, you work out?" And I was like, "Yeah." Obviously, every once in a while, I like to make a joke and be like, "No, what's working out?" But he's like, "Yeah, my wife really loves the beer belly and the gut." And I was like, "Is that what you tell yourself?" I don't think so, buddy. But more importantly, it's not even just about that. What you mentioned about health and the fitness and the longevity in living that healthy, active life, man, how do you put a price tag on that? So I commend you for being the example for your family and for being such an inspiration to so many people, including myself. I'm extremely inspired by you. All the effort you put in, as hard as your job is and how difficult, and overcoming all the obstacles and still looking like you do and doing what you've done, you are one tough SOB, my friend. So thank you. Last question. You're welcome. You deserve it. Well, let's say you earned it. I don't like the word deserve. It implies like you get something for free. You've earned it. So was it worth it?
It's been absolutely worth it. Going back to my son strutting around like he was hot stuff and triggering that button for me. He now, looks forward to every afternoon. It's workout time, and, he's not old enough to lift weights yet, but he is in there. He's doing, the plank jacks and planks and plank to push-ups and jumping jacks, and he's doing all that with dad now, and he looks forward to it. And so seeing that he's actually showing interest in taking care of himself or working out now, it has absolutely made it worth it. Getting some of the compliments I've gotten along the way, that's been exciting. I hadn't seen a lot of the family from Christmas until Easter, and that was when I lost the biggest bulk of my weight. I went from stretching the seams on a pair of 36-inch pants down to a 32. I had to go buy new pants. The unforeseen costs of Coach Jackson's program, but I had to go buy pants for Easter. It was at a local country club, and I had to keep asking, "Hey, is it slacks or can I wear jeans or what?" And everybody couldn't figure out why I was asking. It's like, well, I have to go buy new pants because my old pants don't fit. And then everybody seen me at the brunch that we went to, and everybody's just blown away. And those moments have made it just exciting and really have kept pushing me forward on achieving more and more throughout this.
I love that. I love the story about you working out with your son as well. That's incredible. That, my friend, is what we call generational health. You're being that example, you're teaching. And like I said, I'm sitting here today because of my dad. So who knows what that means? Your son could be the next Tony Horton. Who knows?
I can only hope so. He gets it both from me and his mom. His mom has a very active job, and she puts 13 to 15 miles a day on her feet. So he's got two good examples now instead of just one good example. He's got two of us.
I love that. You two are fantastic parents. You're obviously an incredible inspiration. Again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for trusting me, for investing in yourself, and for all the hard work that you put in, and for sharing your story here today. I know it's going to inspire some people out there to take action because, of course, that's the difference between dreaming and succeeding. Thanks again, Forrest.
Thank you, Coach.